Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology. Thank you for joining us. I'm your host, Ben Crossman, and I hope all of you are having a great day because we have a wonderful show planned for you. And hey, you're fresh off the weekend. You are ready for some, of course, Computer America, and hopefully all of you are, just having a good Monday. So, for today's planned show, we have a lot of very interesting news stories, including some of them are pretty ridiculous, some of them are kind of scary, and we're going to cover all of them as much as we can. So it's going to be fun. But that's in the second part of the show. In the first part, we, of course, as usual, have an interview. But unusually, this is the first time I believe that we've had the company on the show. And we're looking forward to talking with Imperva. And we're going to talk all things cybersecurity and, just how to, or, some of the things in the news. And, these guys deal with it day to day. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun to talk with them. So with that being said, before we get started, a couple of things, including computeramerica.com. That's where you'll find everything from the live video stream to the social media contest brought to you by Logitech, or of course a link to our guest website. So, also any articles, news, videos, anything that we talk about here on the program available in one spot, just to make it simple for you. All that again at our website. And all that and more, of course. So I think with all that said, we're just going to go ahead and jump right into this because, again, looking forward to this. A lot of, kind of hacking, and I believe a lot of our questions actually revolve around the idea of what a bot is and, how they have such a massive effect on public discourse. So again, it's gonna be fun. So joining us today is Mr. Robert Hamilton, and he is the Director of Product Marketing for Imperva. And Robert, thank you for joining us here on Computer America. How you doing?
Good to join you, Ben.
There we go. Yeah, no, it's happy to have you. And again, thank you for coming on the program. So let's get started with a quick background, talk about Imperva, and talk about yourself. How did you find yourself working in this space?
Oh, well, I had been in the computer storage business and the computer server business for a long time. And it was just sort of a stroke of circumstance that a friend called me up one day and asked me if I wanted to work at a company. About 10 years ago, the company was called Postini, and they were bought by Google about 10 years ago, and they were one of the early players in the anti-spam business. So they would, take the spam out of your email and deliver you a clean email stream and put the spam in a special folder, and people just loved them. Well, that was considered internet security, so that's how I got my start.
Okay. Yeah, no, and I'm sure back then it was, very unique, and now it's just kind of standard. It's, I'm sure that technology was rolled into what Google does now, and it's, so I guess that's considered security, and now you're doing, security again with Imperva. So, why don't we talk about, just give us some necessities about Imperva. Do you work directly with larger companies? Are you providing something like an antivirus program? What kind of services does Imperva actually provide?
Well, Imperva's in the classic cybersecurity business, and we have products and services that protect websites from hackers and attackers. And we have a service that filters all the incoming internet traffic through us before it gets delivered to a particular website. We also sell what we call appliances that do the same thing, that sit on the customer site in their data center and also filter all the incoming traffic from the internet before it goes to their websites. We also have products that monitor database activity and help prevent unwanted intruders into databases and the possible theft of a company's database records. So those are our two major product areas. We call them application security and data security.
So, and more on the application security side, it's I guess we do a lot of obviously news here, and we have heard once in a while, mainly targeting people like Krebs on security. They the idea of a bot, and we're going to talk about definitions in a minute, but the service that you provide that's going to filter traffic, reroute it, make sure DDoS, make sure that people can't DDoS your customers. I mean, just talk about, I guess, the importance of that as a service, because, I believe hearing a claim that Amazon Web Services said that they would never be susceptible to that again. We've known since they've made that claim they have been. I mean, these bots and things why can't people get a grip on this? Because it seems like a problem that's only getting bigger and bigger and more common.
Well, here's one of the reasons it's difficult to get a grip on it, because almost since the dawn of the internet, we've had bots, and really bots help make the internet run. As a matter of fact, because we see such a significant percentage of the internet traffic, we're able to determine what percentage of traffic is human-based and what percentage is bot-based. And what we found over the years, this really hasn't changed that much over the last few years, is we find that 60% of all the internet traffic is generated by bots. And then if you so over half of the internet traffic is bots. And then if you break it down and look at bot traffic, 60% of bot traffic is either malicious or suspicious. Okay, so if you break that down, 60% is malicious or suspicious. Half of the traffic on the internet is bot traffic. Therefore, 30% of the traffic on the internet is either malicious or suspicious. So there's a lot of bot traffic out there that is questionable, right? Yeah. And it's soaking up a lot of resources.
Yeah, and I guess those resources, that's very important, because this could mean, I'm sure, a medley of problems for people who are actually people. Real quick, if you could just kind of describe the idea of a non-threatening bot. Are we talking like Google bots that go out and crawl websites and check for content? I mean, what does a non-threatening bot kind of look like?
Well, I think the example that you brought up, the Google bot, is probably the most common non-threatening, if you will, bot. And the Google bot is what really makes the internet to a large extent work, because it's out there scouring websites 24/7 to index all the content and make it available to the Google search engine. Of course, every search engine also sends out their own bots to do the same thing, make sure that the internet is continuously indexed and the indexes are always fresh. So to a large extent, the internet wouldn't work as we know it without those types of bots.
Makes sense. And so that's only about, bots such as that are only about half, and then malicious. What does a malicious, there's malicious traffic, and we know about DDoSes and, taking down sites. I guess, what other uses do these bots kind of have? Is it just about denying legitimate traffic, or is there some other way that people utilize these tools?
Well, one of the most common malicious or suspicious types of bot is what we call the spam bot, right? So think about the website that you go to. I'll use the example of, let's say, a cooking site that makes recipes available, right? Or any site that makes something available and then allows you to comment on it. Well, there are bots out there that will go and put comments into those fields where people could comment on a recipe, but a spam bot can go out there and put any kind of comment
What
in there.
is, and I mean, like, we of course run Computer America. We have a place for comments. I filter, I have a filter set up for, I probably catch about 1,000 a day, and just spam comments. It's rampant, and at the same time, the messages in a lot of cases are nonsensical. They're stupid. They're really, kind of horrible. So I'm sorry for cutting you off there. It's just, I know exactly what you're talking about, and it's a problem. It's just kind of like such a, they're going about it such a blatant way. It's more annoying than it is devious.
It is, except it can be devious when they include a link in the post that entices people that go to your website into clicking on that link, going to another website, and possibly downloading malware and infecting their PCs, which again is probably in order to turn their PC into a bot generator or a zombie that's able to go out and perpetrate DDoS attacks and the like.
Okay, that makes sense. So, and then those, the idea of a botnet and DDoSing, let's talk about why that's, gotten so much publicity, because it's not just about your computer anymore. Can bots also be essentially phones, webcams? Like, what constitutes a bot when you're making a quote-unquote botnet?
Well, a bot is really just a type of software that does an automated activity very quickly and very repetitively. What we found, this is an interesting thing. We found a few years ago some bots being controlled or being hosted, so to speak, on closed-circuit TV cameras. These are a lot of devices, whether it's a DVR or a thermostat or one of these security cameras that you see. There's really a very small operating system in there that's typically based on open source. The credentials for those devices are often really easy to compromise because the passwords are never changed, the passwords are easy to guess. I mean, I still, a couple of years ago, got a home router and the default password was lowercase password. So these devices are easy to compromise, and because they're in essence little computers, hackers have figured out ways of planting software on these internet devices and turning them into 24/7 bot managers.
Okay, and of course those can then be used to kind of do the deed. And we've seen, of course, to throw a buzzword out there, the Internet of Things. Closed circuit television isn't the only thing that uses some kind of operating system. Now it's everything from smartwatches to clothing to appliances and things like that. So I guess all of these are now vulnerable. And hey, that's the fun side. So. Are you saying that, kind of, is it kind of the consumer's job, or is it the manufacturer's job to make sure that you have software updates for your smart stove so it doesn't, attack the Pentagon or something?
Well, I think this is a problem that really needs to be resolved by the device manufacturers themselves. I think anytime that you put the onus on a consumer, say I go out and buy a new home router, or I buy a thermostat, or one of those recent things I bought was a internet-connected irrigation or sprinkler control system. I'm not the guy that should be expected to make sure that device is secure. It's really up to the manufacturer to make sure that upon installation, I'm presented a routine or something is automated that sort of forces me to set up proper security controls on that device before it can connect to the internet. So if there's a password, if it does connect to the internet, make sure I change the password, make sure there's a password strength routine that enforces a strong password, and those sort of things. Those are all the things that are really the responsibility of the device manufacturer, really shouldn't be forcing me to protect the internet. When you want to put these devices into the hands of everyday consumers, you can't expect the consumer to be an expert on internet or computer security.
And I think that's a pretty good segue into our next idea of what a bot is. And as I said, a lot of our questions have to do with Twitter bots. And just as your everyday home user for a smart irrigation system shouldn't be expected to be a security professional, even though you are, I think when people use social media, things like Facebook or Twitter, the idea that discourse can be driven by by these bots. I don't think that every social media user innately thinks, how do I, how am I a shrewd consumer of information? How do I make sure that this isn't presented by, someone who is only pretending to be someone or something like that. I mean, you should always be suspicious, but at the same time, when you see thousands upon thousands of comments, you can't help but go, all right, there's something, there might be something to this. Talk about a Twitter bot, what it is, and why it keeps coming back into the news.
Yeah, well, a Twitter bot is a specific type of bot software that controls a Twitter account using the Twitter API. So this software, this bot, can autonomously perform things like tweeting, retweeting, liking, following, unfollowing, and it can direct messages, Twitter messages, to other accounts. Twitter has rules about the automation and proper and improper uses of automation. Mm-hmm. With so many millions and millions of users, it can be difficult to enforce. So what we found is legitimate Twitter accounts or real Twitter accounts being used to create and spread inaccurate information or to amplify a point of view. We also saw relatively recently, and those are bots that can be used to start spreading rumors, to amplify information. We also saw Twitter accounts that were compromised. So Twitter bots taking on the persona of legitimate users. So people would receive tweets from what they thought were legitimate users, potentially their friends. And there were reports in the news a while back of millions of accounts that were compromised.
Right. Yeah, and of course those it's something that I think Twitter throws us a bone, and I have nothing to back this up on. It's purely speculation, but I will say that there's always been this idea that Twitter, because at one point, I don't know if it's still the case, it was super easy to make a Twitter account. I don't think they even required an email confirmation. All you had to do was set up a username, password, and next thing you know, you look like an egg and you can go do whatever a Twitter user could do. And Twitter would come out with quarterly or yearly reports about, them removing 300,000 fake accounts or 600,000 fake accounts. But a part of me feels like whatever number that they're throwing out there, and they're saying that they're making a concerted effort to really cut down on the Twitter bot problem, it's more of a bone thrown to its shareholders, saying that, hey, look, we're active against this kind of abuse. But I don't feel, and you mentioned that, you mentioned that there are millions that were compromised, and I guess, I mean, Twitter just doesn't seem to either be honest, or they themselves don't know the true extent of bot usage on Twitter. Do you think it's more than kind of Twitter's letting on, or do you think that bot usage is a known entity to Twitter and they're kind of doing the best they can?
Well, tough to say without actually working at Twitter and having some direct insight into what's going on there. But I think a lot of it is the sheer law of numbers. It's just difficult to get a handle on managing a system that has millions and millions of accounts and that are being added at a very, very, very quick rate. So it's really tough for me to speculate on why Twitter hasn't necessarily gotten control of this. clearly their business model is designed to encourage people to sign up for accounts, and they're probably loath to put in a lot of checks in place that make it difficult for legitimate users to set up an account.
Right. Yeah, and that's, I think, what a lot of people are picking up. And I mean, it really does seem like a problem because the articles that you kind of linked here, we'll show a couple of them on the video portion, but Twitter bots were a serious thing when it came to election cycles, and something that's kind of something that kind of gets lost in the dialogue, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on this one, but as I understand it, Twitter bots aren't just about pushing one side that they kind of want to happen. Twitter bots are there to kind of spread disorder, and when they do that, they'll take either side. They'll take both sides of an argument at the same time. They'll push everyone's buttons until just kind of conversation of legitimate users reaches a boiling point. Like Twitter bots aren't, or at least the people controlling these bots, they aren't that stupid, are they? They're willing to stir up as much chaos as they kind of can, right?
Absolutely. I think what the researchers have found is that these social media bots are out to spread misinformation and propaganda. They're out to spread fake news, if you will. They're also out to amplify points of view of legitimate candidates. So there's those two major things going on, spreading fake news and amplifying real opinion. They're really used for both.
Yeah, and so amplifying opinion, and we have a question here about, can bots really influence people? Like I said, though, with the bots concerning the spam traffic on Computer America, a lot of typos. There are links that are to very long, convoluted. Sometimes they end in .ru. They're pretty kind of obvious when when they're not really trying. By influencing by public opinion, by influencing real people, I guess they have to be a little bit less obvious. Can people really be fooled by these things? Like how hard is it to really detect if all those comments are from actual people or if they're kind of automatically generated?
Well, that's a really good question. After what happened in the last election cycle, there were a couple of interesting studies that popped up. One out of the co-authored by University of Oxford and University of Pennsylvania. It was called The Computational Propaganda in the United States Manufacturing Consensus Online. And there was another one out of the University of British Columbia, which was titled Digital Threats to Democratic Elections. I think researchers are loath to stick their neck out and speculate without a lot of data, and that's really the point of these researchers, is to collect data, to run experiments, to see. And while the collective opinion sort of runs from inconclusive to, yeah, they can influence people's opinion, I think it's definitely leaning towards the collective opinion that these bots can actually do some harm, as opposed to, no, everybody can recognize a fake bot when they see it. Remember, I'm old enough to remember chain letters. Remember chain letters? You'd get one in the mail, and it was just so obvious. It's like your parents would tell you, don't even open that, right?
Right.
It's almost like it was like poison, but it was so ridiculous, right? A chain letter. Everybody recognized them. It had been copied like 1 billion times, and you go, oh, it's a chain. Ooh, it's a chain letter. And most people just sort of ignored them, right? Well, fast forward like 20, 30 years, this stuff's really pretty sophisticated, and I could imagine that there's a certain number of people that run the range of sort of relatively not educated to relatively well-educated that can really fall for a well-crafted fake human in the form of a bot.
And by the way, we're checking out some of these articles here from there's one from Sri Lanka that analyzed about 200,000 tweets and 4,000 bots, and there's another one here in Southeast Asia, Malaysia, and places like that. This is a problem not just for the U.S. elections, because we've talked about that, and it certainly was an issue. Facebook and Twitter have said as much, but this is kind of a worldwide problem. And as much as we, kind of hold ourselves, we're Americans and we are well educated, we fall for it. What about places that don't, that haven't really had this kind of contact with, with propaganda, with the idea that not everything you read online is, to be taken as gospel? And my question is, this isn't just an American problem, is it? Like, this is a worldwide problem.
Absolutely. And when you think about how Facebook and Twitter, particularly Facebook, has spread like wildfire throughout the world, you can imagine places where people have a cell phone. That's their sort of connectedness, if you will. They have a cell phone, and really their key source of news is Facebook, right? They're getting almost all of their news exclusively from Facebook, and they may have or they may not have grown up with an ability to discern fact from less than fact and true from false. And the reality is their entire news feed is coming from Facebook, and that's a new experience for them. Who are they to question? It's coming off the telephone. It seems real to them, and that's how a lot of these bad actors get away with spreading misinformation throughout the world, and particularly those countries that don't have the news distribution and media that we have in this country.
Yeah, it's. I mean, how expensive can this really be? Because we've seen some of these bot farms. In some cases, they are literally teenagers. Not to play into the stereotype, but teenagers. I don't know if they're in basements, but they've found young 20s teenagers running some of the largest botnets in the world and selling them online as kind of a service for hire. And, they're selling them for very, very cheap prices, not just Twitter bots, but also things like DDoSing. How expensive is it to do, set these up? Is this like a rich man's game, and it's, rich organizations or countries that do this, or is it kind of cheap, so it's very prolific?
Well, it's actually kind of cheap. These DDoS bots, like the ones that attack websites and try to bring them down, you have people that we call them bot herders that have collected, tens of thousands, maybe even hundreds of thousands of devices, cameras, DVRs, people's home PCs that are used to send massive numbers of commands to a website to try and bring it down. We also have this other type of bot, which is the social media bot, the Twitter bot, the Facebook bot. These are more custom. These have to be designed to look like a human. They're not going to be interpreted. They're not going to be interpreted by a machine. Somebody human is going to look at them and try and figure out if it's a human or not, and it has to spread some news. And again, one of those studies that I cited, the one out of the University of British Columbia,
right,
actually came up with. They did an experiment. They came up with a small bot army to spread some news, and they found some interesting things. And I'll kind of summarize for you. The first off was it's about $30 a bot to create 1,000 bots. So you can get started with $30,000, which that's a lot of money in my opinion. But if you're going to spread a political message, it can be pretty cheap for the effectiveness. And what happens is you start with 1,000 bots, and they spread a message, and maybe everybody doesn't fall for it, but a substantial number of people do fall for the fake message or the bot's message, and then a real human starts retweeting it, and that's where the power of these bots really come in, is their ability to start a rumor, so to speak, that then takes on a life of its own, And then the idea that there's a bot in the mix becomes irrelevant because you're receiving the message from a real human.
Yeah, and Robert, I'm going to have to stop you there. Would you mind staying over so we can continue our conversation? We're about to head off to break.
Sure.
Oh, perfect. So everyone, Robert Hamilton, Director of Product Marketing, Imperva. We'll be right back. Computer America.
Greece is cheap.
But the airfare costs a fortune.
Paris?
Not much closer, and again, airfare...
What about Puerto Vallarta?
Let's face it, flying anywhere is just too expensive.
Wait, what's this? Low-cost airlines.
With one call to low-cost airlines, you'll drastically slash your travel costs. We're talking insanely low airline prices to any of your favorite destinations. Where would you like to go? London, Rome, Costa Rica, Australia?
Wow, that's cheap.
So why wait? Call now to learn how crazy cheap it is to fly anywhere in the U.S. or international. Our prices are so low, we can't publish them. The only way to get them is to call to instantly hear the most amazing best deals on airline travel. It's that easy. So call now and start packing.
800-215-4461. 800-215-4461. 800-215-4461. That's 800-215-4461.
We are all Brother Wolf. 10 years ago, a group of locals banded together to create positive change. We took animals into our homes, held adoption events at local retailers, and talked to the community about our mission to help build a no-kill Asheville. A decade later, we have achieved so many victories for animals in need. There's been so much progress, yet there's still so much to do. As part of our year-long celebration, we encourage you to become a member of our special Compassionate Circle program. With a monthly donation of $10 or more, you will have behind-the-scenes access to the work we are doing at Brother Wolf. Our goal is to reach 1,000 members because we receive no government funding. Working together, we can help build and sustain no-kill communities. Learn more at compassionatecircle.bwar.org. We are a 501c3 tax-deductible organization.
Welcome back to the Computer America Show. It is 32 minutes past the hour as we continue on here. Robert Hamilton, Director of Product Marketing for Imperva. So gracious to kind of stay over with us. And Robert, I apologize for having to cut you off there. But before the break, you were kind of citing a story, I believe, from the University of British Columbia about their foray into making a botnet for their own purposes, for testing. And I believe you were getting to the point where getting 1,000 bots doesn't sound like a lot, and especially if they're all talking amongst themselves. But I believe it's kind of the idea of something going viral and how bots can kind of push that idea. Right?
Right. So all you need to do is start with a relatively small group of bots who can start a story, and then within a couple of generations, that bot army can die down, and the story is self-perpetuating through real human users, right? So you can start out some fake news with some bots, and then the unsuspecting humans will just continue to perpetuate it among their friends. And that's really the power of how these social bots work, is unlike spam, they're spread, eventually the stories are spread by real users and real friends and real humans. And that's the power of how this misinformation can get spread.
So, and that's a pretty big problem because, I believe most people here have probably heard of Reddit. It's like the 4th most visited website. It's a place for, discussion for different kinds of topics or posts. And there was one about 1.5 years, 2 years ago of a user that did exactly that. He wanted to go out and send a post to the top of the front page, as they call it, which, doesn't sound like that big a deal, but you realize that it's viewed by millions of people. I'm sure that Facebook and Twitter, I know Twitter for sure has these things called trending, and it's the same idea where, they kind of put it up front because they assume people want to talk about this. And the algorithm is not as intelligent as someone sitting there curating all this content. It's, it analyzes certain data points, such as how many people liked it, how fast did they like it, did they view it, did they actually go, how long were they watching it, little things like that that were very susceptible to to manipulation from these bots. So we see this happening across not just Facebook, not just Twitter, but I'm sure anywhere where there's a discussion to be had. How do companies kind of get around this? Is this something that I guess Facebook, I think, hired something like a couple thousand fact checkers and moderators. Is this something that you throw people at until computers get smart enough to identify other computers? Or I guess if you had the answer to this, you'd be a very important person. But yeah, how do you go about changing this?
Yeah, I think we're in new territory here. Obviously, I think some of the things that have occurred over the last couple 3 years have caught some of these social media companies by surprise. And, do you solve it with humans or do you solve it with machines? And I think you do both. But I was a little surprised a few weeks back when I heard that Facebook was going to hire up to 10,000 people to help solve this problem, and that seems like a small army of people to throw at the problem. It appears that it's a significant issue, and I think a lot of these 10,000 people were going to actually read the stuff and determine whether or not it was real or not. So, big issue. I don't think anybody really knows how to solve it right now, but they're throwing people and technology at the problem.
So I guess going forward, the, of course, next question is there's going to be an election. There's the midterms, of course, coming up. There are massive issues overseas in Europe that we've seen bots kind of take either side on. There's, I mean, let's face it, a lot of public opinion is shaped by what is seen on social media. That is the point of it, is that, issues that people care about, you get to discuss, share, and hey, get to see things that you assume other people want you to see. But that is very quickly being a target for, of course, manipulation. How do we go forward? Is this kind of like the manufacturer versus the customer thing, where is it the manufacturer's job to apply the security updates, or is it up to the consumer? So I guess in this case, would it be, is it Facebook and Twitter's responsibility to make sure that their platform isn't being used for evil, or is it up to the consumer to be like, hey, let's if this sounds like something that would drive me up a wall, why don't we look at its first source, or why don't we be a little incredulous? Where does the fix come in?
Well, I tell you, my opinion is that if the companies themselves, like Facebook and Twitter, don't do something to make sure that their platforms are not used for evil, the government's going to step in and make sure that they don't. So they have a huge interest in solving this problem before somebody actually forces a solution on them. They have to acknowledge that their role in society has what it's become, and need to take some of the same responsibilities that true media outlets take, which is verification of stories and the like, to make sure that they're not spreading rumor and innuendo. So they need to fix the problem before the government forces them to fix it.
That's very well said. And yeah, obviously this cannot continue where anyone with $300,000 or anyone with access to one of these companies can really drive discussion and therefore policy for a lot more people. So I think you're absolutely right. It's a problem that if it's not fixed, they're gonna make it fixed. And yeah, very good. So I mean, and of course at Imperva, you guys are dealing with, of course, things like DDoS and application web services, things like that, protecting them. I mean, any kind of, and I know this is maybe secret sauce, but are there any services that you're kind of thinking of pushing towards your customers where it's like, where we would, like, let's say there's some kind of outrage and it's being driven by bot traffic or bot discussion. Is there any way that you can, maybe like a reputation bot protection service or something like that?
Well, today we offer bot protection in the form of enabling our clients to ensure that they can minimize the number of malicious or suspicious bots on their websites and maximize the ability of the good bots to do their job. That is a product that is in very high demand and continues to help make the internet safer on a day-by-day basis, and that's one of our core businesses.
All right, very cool. And I'll let you have the last word before we say goodbye here. And again, thank you so much for staying over. If people want to find out more about what Imperva does, where can they go?
I would suggest they go to our website, imperva.com, check out what products and solutions we have available, largely geared towards enterprises and large enterprises. And we hope that if some of your listeners out there have any interest in the company, that they'll come to one of our websites.
All right, very cool. And like we said, at computeramerica.com, stays up there for about 2 weeks. But yeah, we have a link to Imperva there as well. So in the meantime, Robert Hamilton, Director of Product Marketing for Imperva. And Robert, very great discussion. Have not really talked much about Twitter bots, but obviously Twitter bots talk a lot about themselves. So hey, this was a lot of fun. Thank you for coming on the show.
Oh, thanks for your time, Jen.
All right, have a great one. And everyone, one more time, Imperva, Robert Hamilton, have a great one. Bye-bye. All right, so there he goes, everyone. And that is our interview part of the show. Happy that he could join us. And we're, of course, going to go ahead and move on into the news portion of the program. And this is where we cover the latest topics, as many as we can. And hey, we have fun with it. So here we go, computer and technology news brought to you by OWC. And by the way, just because we haven't, said something in the past, we were on weekend. So OWC, we mention them quite often. You can see their logo there on the video part. OWC, they're a great company that, of course, sponsors Computer America. And we like them because, well, they are one of the few manufacturers out there that service not strictly Apple, but they have a lot of Apple-esque products that, of course, work with within the ecosystem, and they're very stylish. They're very well built, well maintained, and hey, just as a service provider and product provider, very honored and very happy to have them here on Computer America. So hopefully you go check them out. OWC.com, of course, OWC standing for Other World Computing. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get into some of these stories, and let's do some of the funny ones first because those are better than the scary ones. And I like this one. So you may have heard we talked a bit about the Chinese facial recognition software. They were outfitting their police officers who were able to wear them just like sunglasses, and were able to pick people out of a crowd who were in the system, saying that, hey, this is a fugitive. If you see them, arrest on sight. Blah blah blah. And we heard a lot of success stories. We heard, I think there was like a music concert with like 300,000 people. It was a massive event, and they were able to pull like 6 people out of that mass of humanity. It's their technology really seemed to actually be good, really, really good. So that kind of technology segues into this article, and this is from Ars Technica, saying that the UK, United Kingdom police, say that a 92% false positive facial recognition is no big deal. Let me repeat that. 92% false positive. Now, to be fair, we don't know the Chinese systems of false positive, the rate at which they incorrectly identify a person, and we don't know that rate, but 92 seems a little high. So South Wales police say that no facial recognition system is 100% accurate under all conditions. And yeah, 92. So yeah. Oh, and by the way, everyone. Oh, I guess we should mention this. Every Friday we do a giveaway of for Computer America, sponsored by Logitech. And if you want to enter that, feel free to go on over to our website and enter using that little app right there on the right side of the homepage. So every single Friday we give away a prize live on the air. So check that out. But as you were saying about this whole facial recognition thing, a British police agency is defending its use of facial recognition technology at the June 2017 Champions League soccer final in Wales, saying that despite the system having a 92% failure rate, no one has ever been arrested due to such an error. So obviously they, kind of do their due diligence in making sure that they have the right person after the software says, that they're wanted. But yeah, I'm sure that after 92% chances of it happening, 92% chance that it's wrong, I'm sure even the people using the software would kind of get fed up with the service. So they said about 2,500 alerts and about 2,300 of them were false positives. So about 9 out of 10 times, someone was flagged incorrectly. And I gotta say, at this point, you kind of just got to assume that they would have a higher success rate if they just kind of went, is that Jan? That might be Jan over there. That might have a better success rate than this facial recognition software. So, anywho, no plans of giving it up, and they're working on it all the time. One can only hope. And they said that they're very cognizant of concerns about privacy, and we have built-in checks and balances into our methodology to make sure our approach is justified and balanced. Those built-in checks, by the way, seem to be, they don't actually work. So don't worry about your privacy. Yeah, nothing's being invaded. So good luck, UK police. It's not an easy job. If it was, Google would have gotten it right the first time. So there's that one. And let's go ahead and move on to the next article here. Again, computer technology news. All right, so this one is kind of good for, I think, the graphics card industry in general. And it had to deal with NVIDIA. NVIDIA, they make graphics cards. They are really the leaders when it comes to graphics cards. AMD is trying their best, and they have a lot of very nice cards. But, just like with processors and Intel versus AMD, Intel is the clear frontrunner, and NVIDIA is the clear frontrunner for GPUs. Well, they had something that a lot of people were very iffy on, and it was called the GeForce Partner Program. They saw it as anti-competitive. It was something not really, how do I put this? Well, it was anti-competitive. It was not really fair to other people trying to come into the space, and by other people, well, I kind of only mean AMD, because they would try to make deals, or PC manufacturers or boutique stores that would potentially put their hardware in their systems that they sold to consumers. The GPP, the GeForce Partner Program, they if you were part of this, then you got to throw on a fancy logo. You got to get some free advertising from NVIDIA by saying, hey, we're part of the GeForce Partnership Program. They promoted the crap out of it. And essentially, they pushed everyone out of the market because everyone wanted to be part of that partnership program. Whereas if you weren't, then hey, you were just at a clear disadvantage. And it's not like they were pushing an inferior product. It's just that they were pushing almost a clear monopoly. So manufacturers could still opt for AMD cards, but they would have to be sold through a different brand. And should a manufacturer not play ball, NVIDIA would at best not include it in its marketing efforts, and at worst actively hold back inventory to exclude it from upcoming GPU launches. So obviously flexing its muscles, NVIDIA was kind of making sure that anyone who wasn't part of the partnership program, yeah, they would be at a disadvantage. So anyways, NVIDIA denied and continues to deny the severity of the GPP, claiming that the partnership program was about making sure gamers who want NVIDIA tech could get NVIDIA tech. And the rumors, conjecture, mistruths go far beyond its intent. Rather than battling misinformation, it's better to just cancel the program. I'm not sure how much misinformation there really is out there. It's just that NVIDIA was using its position in the market to further solidify the fact that it was the leader, and everyone wants to be partnered with the leader, and that makes it so that, hey, anyone else, they can't really, they're not playing on an even playing field. So not really sure there's much to conjecture there. And anyways, they have, let's see. So for example, as this article, kind of states, for example, ASUS launched a new gaming line called Ares last month specifically for AMD Radeon graphics cards. And this seemingly laid the foundation for ASUS's popular Republic of Gaming line becoming a GeForce partner brand. And they said that shuttering Ares should be a tacit admission that it was bowing to NVIDIA's whims, but pushing AMD cards solely through a less recognizable brand could hurt sales. And whether ASUS continues to separate out its NVIDIA and AMD lines should be a good barometer for how much of a change the public closure of the GPP presents. And really, I think I hate to use, this cliche, but at the end of the day, consumers, gamers, people who are interested in either AMD or NVIDIA, they really don't care. There is certainly a level of fanboyism. There is certainly a level of preference, but if both worked, and trust me, AMD does a very good job of making sure that they're compatible with a lot of different tech out there, that if you want AMD, it's going to work just fine. And this idea that you needed this partnership program to say that, hey, NVIDIA is going to work with this system, if it's part of the partnership program, everyone already works with NVIDIA. NVIDIA is so massive, you can't afford not to work with NVIDIA. So consumers are going to want what's the best graphics card for the price. And the idea that you need to create partnerships and you need to promote these things individually, that's not really what people want. They just want the best piece of gear for the lowest price. Not a lot to it. Everything else is just marketing. So anyways, the GPP, the GeForce Partnership Program, is going away. And hey, that's probably a really good thing. So there you have it. All right. So we have time for maybe 2 more articles. Let's go ahead and talk about Firefox. So Firefox, they've been around for a long time. Don't really need to explain who they are, but they were one of the pioneers when it came to third-party browsers. They, I believe the team from Netscape founded the company that eventually became Mozilla, which produces Firefox. And for the longest time, they were the out-and-out winners. They provided a much better product. Then Chrome came along, and Chrome is a huge fan favorite. And Mozilla is, of course, either trailing in second or third, probably second, maybe behind Microsoft Edge, just because it's a default browser. But Mozilla, of course, they have a following. Sometimes it's people who don't want to be part of the corporation that Google has started, or they want to be less identifiable because sometimes Mozilla picks up on certain practices that are good for quote-unquote privacy. Well, anyways, that's Mozilla, and now they're coming out with this idea that maybe, just maybe, to stay afloat, to stay a company, and to continue providing a product, they just might include ads natively within the browser. And for a long time, that was not what Mozilla stood for. So this is a pretty big change. But yeah, Firefox is adding ads because only insults are free. And this is an article from The Verge. And yeah, Mozilla's motto is quote, internet for people, not profit. However, the realities of having to fund all of its ventures are forcing the company into adopting one of the web's less human-friendly aspects, which is sponsored content. So, having acquired a read-it-later service called Pocket last year, Mozilla has been populating new tabs in Firefox with Pocket reading suggestions. And, well, those are going to include links from advertisers now. So when you open up a new link, just like in Chrome or any other service, there are kind of recommended either past websites that you visited or recommended websites. Yeah, looks like those may have sponsored websites now from Mozilla. And if you're using Firefox's nightly and beta builds, you may have already seen sponsored links appearing among the Pocket suggestions. And the feature will be making its way onto the proper Firefox browser, so version 60, this month. And in a blog post, they said that the founder of Pocket, again, that's kind of the service they're using to pick the websites from, they're mentioning the advertising model is broken, citing the loss of privacy, transparency, and control for the user. And what he and Mozilla proposes as an alternative is to restore all three of those facets to Firefox users while still generating some income by placing paid-for links in front of those users. And Mozilla promises to only promote valuable content worthy of your time. Who really says what's worthy? That's probably up to some level of interpretation. But they said that, yeah, they're going to do it. So without the fine-grained targeting that Facebook and Google are able to offer advertisers, Mozilla will surely be making a lot less through its ads, but it seems like the company thinks it will be enough to make the irritation for its users worthwhile. And that's really the question. I mean, Mozilla is a frequently used browser. There's no doubt about it. But by putting these ads in front of people, is that something that people are going to be okay with? And if they aren't okay with, is the money that they're going to make from it going to make up for the irate users that they now have to deal with? Because Mozilla is facing a problem, which is the fact that, well, there is a relatively good alternative to their product. It's not like it's Mozilla or nothing. It's Mozilla or Google Chrome. And then, of course, there are others such as Safari, which is run by Apple, Opera, one of our favorite. There are others. So, of course, Google with Chrome has been talking about how to block certain advertising natively using Chrome, and now Firefox is talking about how to add some level of sponsored content within Chrome. That probably has to do with the fact that Firefox is making not as much money or doesn't have the financial backing of Chrome in through Google. And yeah, it's probably not going to be the death knell for Firefox. If you truly believe in the tenets of what Firefox does, then as a user, you are probably going to be okay with this on some level. But this is something that I think Firefox originally would have been very, not okay with. So times are changing, that's it. And hey, the music means that we're just about done here. So unfortunate because, hey, we only have an hour, but what an hour it has been. Thank you so much to our guest for coming on the show today. And if you missed any part of today's show, feel free to catch us on any and all, of course, social media sites, and be sure to catch us on anywhere podcasts are heard, including Apple iTunes, Google Play Store, iHeartRadio, SoundCloud, Spreaker, just any of those. If you didn't catch the live program, catch us there. So tomorrow on the program, be sure to tune in to check us out when we talk to, all right, this is going to be a little hard to kind of label on the show, but it's a company called #paid. So it's not going to be a paid advertisement, but the company is called #paid. We're going to have to figure out how to do that. But in the meantime, folks, thank you so much for joining us here on Computer America. I want to say have a great day, and be sure to catch us every day, Monday through Friday, 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern, here on Computer America, and of course, IRN and the live video feed. Until next time, everyone, have a great day.